I'd like to get started here. Good morning. I understand there's some noise interruption behind me. I'm sorry, folks, that's not something I can control. I live underneath a radio tower and it's probably bleeding through my wiring. I apologize. I'm here today to talk about stormwater pond maintenance and retrofits. Before I start, I would like to again reiterate that we will be answering all of your questions as best we can. We will also be going back through your questions after we complete the shows today and making sure our answers are right, and we will provide them to all before the next session. So, hopefully we get the answers correct, but if not, we will give you further information before October. So again, good morning. I'm Stu Comstock, Chief of the Program Review Division. I'm here today to talk about stormwater pond maintenance and retrofits. As we discussed earlier, there are at least 15,000 small ponds, or what we consider to be small ponds, in Maryland. Many of these were built before 2002. It is quite likely that many of them do not have proper as-built plans. Many of them have not been properly maintained. And for those jurisdictions looking to satisfy NPDES MS4 restoration requirements, many of these small ponds are being looked at as opportunities for water quality retrofits. Clearly, we are just looking at the tip of the iceberg. It is our hope that many of the ponds out there look like this facility, nicely mown and landscaped, vegetated around the perimeter, in good condition. Or even this facility, which is also very well vegetated around the edge and in good condition, although there are some trees and shrubs. These facilities clearly have been maintained routinely. Let's talk about routine maintenance. Okay, routine maintenance for the purposes of small ponds and dams is the removal of trees and woody vegetation. And by removal of trees and woody vegetation, we mean flush cut, not removal of the root structure, in areas within 15 feet upstream and downstream of the embankment toe, within a 25-foot radius of the control structure, and within 15 feet of abutment contacts, outlet, spillway, and plunge pool. Restoration of disturbed areas. This means maintaining a dense cover of low grassy vegetation on these areas. Typically, that means mowing these areas at least twice a year. And it also means the removal of debris from the control structures and low flow outlets and orifices. Here we have Here we have a nice image of a facility that needs some repair. Clearly there are some trees and shrubs on the embankment, and there's some debris in front of the low flow orifice. Many of our older facilities may actually look like this. And here we have a crew outperforming necessary maintenance. Here they are removing trees and woody vegetation from the dam embankment. Notice they are flush cutting the trees and not removing the root structures. And here's an example with a corrugated metal pipe riser where debris has blocked the low flow orifice. There's also of note to notice that there is no trash rack on this low flow orifice. So clearly some maintenance needs to be done here on this facility. While we're talking about maintenance that requires a permit or an approval, and I'm going to use the word approval from here on out. Approval is required for construction, repairs, or modifications to a dam or reservoir. This includes removal of tree stumps and roots and placement of embankment fill. In this image, clearly there are some problems with this embankment. The trees have fallen over and the root structures are exposed. This has caused problems with the dam embankment and is leading to failure of the facility. This type of maintenance would require approval. And while this young guy might seem to be innocent, hiding in his little hole in the side of this dam embankment, it is not merely sufficient to fill in these holes, for we do not know how deep they go and how much damage they have caused to the dam embankment. This again is an example of maintenance that would require approval. Finally, I'd like to show this picture of a smaller facility that was built for water quality purposes that has been overtopped and there's some erosion in the dam embankment. Again, this would require approval. That approval would be either from the local approval authority, which would be the Soil Conservation District, or if the structure was large enough, from the Maryland Department of the Environment Dam Safety Permits Division. Also requiring approval is any modification of a dam, spillway, or reservoir from its original design and specifications. What this means is if you change one of these ponds or dams, somebody needs to approve it. For example, addition of a forebay. While this may seem to be innocent enough, and it's actually helpful for removing debris and trash that enters the facility, it still requires an approval because it's a modification of the original facility design. Flow control modifications. The addition of a low flow control to a facility is a change in the original design and specifications and requires approval. Unfortunately, in this case, the modification was not approved. And as you can see on the lower left of this photo, the junction with the principal spillway is probably not up to standards. More recently, we've seen many modifications to facilities for water quality purposes that include various innovative technologies. In these two images, we see a number of modifications that have been made to this facility. Most notably, we see that the embankment has been open cut to replace the original corrugated metal pipe spillway with a concrete spillway. Again, this is an improvement to the facility, but it is a modification. Secondly, we see here that there has been a change in the flow control to this facility with the addition of a low flow orifice. And here is that low flow orifice here that has been added to the facility. Finally, while it's less visible in this image, but you can see here, a structure has been added to the dam embankment with a foundation footing, a concrete footer. All of these modifications to this facility should have required approval. Lastly, while we're talking about routine maintenance that requires a permit, any repairs or reconstruction that involve a substantial portion of the structure. I had originally used this image to talk about the removal of debris, but upon further inspection, I noticed that there was another issue here. Not only is this trash rack blocked with debris, but it is also collapsed under the weight of that debris. This repair would more than likely require approval. It's more obvious in this image what has happened here. An older corrugated metal pipe riser has collapsed. More than likely the barrel has been damaged as well, and while it's less noticeable, there's a hole in the embankment up here as well. Clearly, this maintenance would require approval. And as a last reminder, many of our older small ponds and dams have corrugated metal pipe spillways, and in many cases, the useful lifespan of these spillways has passed, and they might look like this. This repair is going to require an approval. It is a modification to the structure of the dam and or its spillway, and should be approved. So the question has popped up, who should be doing this approval? In most cases, the local soil conservation district or other delegated entity may approve these repairs if the drainage area to the pond is less than 640 acres. The height of the pond is less than 20 feet. The dam is a low hazard structure, or in other words, failure is not likely to cause loss of life or property damage. The pond is not located in a use-free watershed, and the pond has a maximum storage volume of less than 50 acre-feet. If any of these conditions are not met, the approval authority is going to be the Department's Dam Safety Permits Division. Let me switch gears for a second. And let's talk about retrofitting of small ponds for water quality purposes. We know this is a good thing. Anything that we can do to improve water quality in our receiving streams is a positive effort. However, oftentimes when we look at small ponds for these opportunities, we are opening up Pandora's box and we never know what's going to come out. One thing we do know is that any retrofit will involve a change from the original design and specifications. And as we just discussed, this will require approval. I think this is important to state. If you change the original design and specifications, even for a retrofit for water quality purposes, it does require approval. So as the individuals who are reviewing these for approval, what should we be looking for? Well, clearly watershed use designation, use 3 versus other uses. We're going to need to know if it's a hazard class A or something more. So we're going to need to know the dam height, storage volume, and drainage area. We're going to want to see a dam breach analysis. Why? Because conditions have changed. We need to see a hazard creep assessment. Some of these facilities are fairly old, and there has been development both upstream and downstream of the facilities. This needs to be considered in any retrofit situation. We need to ensure that the embankment was constructed properly. We need to ensure that whatever work we're doing, the hydraulic modeling determines the adequacy of that design. This next one is probably one of the most important. Any facility we modify needs to be maintained and in good operating condition. If not, the retrofit should include bringing that facility up to standards. We should not be retrofitting or allowing as water quality facilities that are substandard and need maintenance. Clearly, this is a good opportunity to get rid of trees or woody vegetation on the dam structures and to look at slope stability. Finally, this is a good time to go back out and look for appropriate geohazards, such as karst terrain or steep slopes that may have impacted the facility since its original design. Retrofits should be in good condition. While I would not necessarily approve of the operating conditions or standard operating conditions here while we're doing the inspection. I will say that our former boss, Brian Clevenger, is looking at this corrugated metal pipe riser to ensure that it is in good condition. This is part of the inspection process to assess these facilities to make sure they are ready to be retrofitted. Next, in some cases, nature has already done the retrofit for us. There are many facilities out there that have been converted from dry ponds or wet ponds to wetland conditions. And in many cases, these may actually be providing water quality enhancements that were additional or bonuses. This is fine, except that we still need to make sure these facilities are maintained in good operable condition. It is not acceptable to allow this to happen and have a corrugated metal pipe riser or a spillway be in bad condition. So when we allow for naturally converted facilities, we do need to still ensure that they are properly maintained and in good shape. Next, this is a good time to go out and look around the facility to make sure there aren't any sinkholes or slope stability issues or anything else that may require additional features like an impermeable liner or riprap protection in specific areas. So what we're trying to avoid is situations like this. This was a retrofit that came into our office for a review. They've added an innovative technology to the facility. And I just want to point out a few items here of concern. The first thing that immediately jumps out in this picture is the fact that the trash rack is rusted through and in many cases probably needs to be either repaired or replaced. However, you notice that when the retrofit was installed, that was not the case. 2, clearly there's been a modification right here to the low flow control. That's a modification of the design specifications. And again, this was not reviewed. Finally, please notice up here, this is the dam embankment. Here's the barrel going through. And there's an awful lot of woody vegetation on that dam embankment that should be removed. However, the retrofit was in place and that was the maintenance wasn't done. Finally, we need to be careful about hazard class on these facilities. While this facility may not be a higher hazard class, certainly we should be concerned because there is a roadway over top of the embankment. So if this embankment is greater than 20 feet in height with a roadway over top of it, that's modifications that would need to be approved by MDE's Dam Safety Permits Division. If this embankment is less than 20 feet, then it would be approved by the local soil conservation district or delegated entity. Look, I don't want to come off as being negative about stormwater retrofits. There are more good examples of retrofits out there than there are bad examples. However, we learn more from looking at the bad examples on how we should be reviewing things and making sure things are done properly. So why are we concerned about this? I want to thank every one of you who have sent in your surveys. If you have not sent in your survey, please do so. We are using this information not only in these presentations, but also in future presentations. So in looking across the responses to our surveys, this highlights some of our concerns. First, in many of the local jurisdictions, there are multiple organizations reviewing. 54% of you said you have memorandum of understandings or agreements to share responsibilities for the review of small ponds. Second, we need to make sure there is consistency, not only inside each jurisdiction where there are multiple agencies doing the work, but across all jurisdictions. For example, only 50% of you who responded to our survey actually review for hazard creep. We may not all be using the same design criteria. 21% of you told us that you have climate change criteria. 29% have supplemental design guidance. Finally, we need to make sure that we are all working from the same page, that we're all using the same standards. 42% of you, less than half, who responded to our survey, were aware of the new dam safety guidance that's published on MDE's website. That's an issue for us and for you. We found that 71% still allow anti-seep collars, although there are strong recommendations against doing so. And finally, only 75% of you said that you verify as-built plans. My question to the 25% who said they don't, why not? With that, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to open the floor for questions on this particular topic on stormwater management, retrofits, and maintenance. Are there any questions?
We have about 9 minutes left, although it looks like we're running ahead of schedule.
Yep. And before we actually go through those questions, if anyone has anything else to add, please feel free to type their questions in the chat box. So the first question that we have is going to be, what approvals are needed if a dam breach is proposed with the retrofit?
That's going to be, and John or Hal, if you want to chime in on this one, you may, but if you are breaching a dam, that's going to require approval either from the local soil conservation district, if it's within their jurisdiction, or from the MDE Dam Safety Permits Division. It's no different than if they're building the pond.
Yeah, Stu, thanks. I agree with that comment. We actually have a part of our guidance documents on the website talks about dam decommissioning. And the reason we have something there is because we think it's important